success coach and social advocate. And I'm back on here tonight giving some information about the the current situation that's happening here in the States. We are currently in a coup d'etat front with Donald Trump, which is Donald Trump and Elon Musk. In my opinion, this is a January 6th 2.0 operation. And Donald Trump is trying to go to war with just about everybody. He's trying to go to war with Canada, trying to go to war with Mexico, Panama, just all kinds of people. Now he wants to go to war with Gaza. So I just wanted to talk about a little bit about some of the news that's happening, and then we're going to talk about what the strategy, what their plan is, because it seems like it's seemingly it seems like it's all over the place, but it's actually not all over the place. And so I just wanted to go over some of the different things that are happening on the news. So let's just take a news clip of what's happening with Gaza and Trump's announcement today in regards to going to war with, well, basically going over there and doing the unthinkable to those people, because he's not going to move them. If Trump is trying to cut back on government spending here, you think he's going to spend money on moving those people to somewhere else so they can set up something new? Do you think that? So that's just a way for him to say that he's going to do what he shouldn't be doing. But let's look at this news story. This is a news story from earlier today. Hold on.
Democratic Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz of Florida, member of the House Committee on Appropriations. Congresswoman, it's great seeing you always. This morning,
thank you.
Speaker Johnson was asked whether he supports the president's comments. Here's what he had to say just a little while ago.
Yeah, we're trying to get the details of it, but I think this is a good development. We have to back Israel 100%, and so whatever form that takes, we're interested in having that.
Listen, nobody in life do you back 100%. There's nobody in your life that you would back 100%. Even with your parents, if they go off the deep end, your job is to be the voice of reason and kind of reel it back, just so that things aren't don't go too complete, don't go out of order to where you can't to go to a point of no return. You don't want to go there. But this man already says that they're going to back Israel, a whole country where the leader is drunk on power, just like Donald Trump. They're both drunk on power, and he already talking about he wants to back them 100%. That's so weird to me. But this is the Speaker of the House of Representatives, right? So there's Washington, D.C. He's the Speaker of the House of Washington, D.C., so the District of Columbia. And then you have the rest of the states, the rest of the 50 states that actually have, 49 states, that have their own representatives, set up in a similar fashion. But this is the one that's over D.C., so let's go.
Discussion, but it was a surprising development, but I think it's one that we'll applaud.
What was your reaction to all of this, Congresswoman?
Well, Jose, first of all, I'm so sorry to hear about the loss of your beloved Uncle Waldo. I know
thank you.
Thank you so
much.
I mean, let's just be clear. Hamas is a brutal terrorist organization that fanatically attacked Israel, killed 1,200 of her citizens, took 250 captive, and we have 79 hostages that remain in Gaza, still being held captive. And after this first phase of ceasefire and hostage release, we have to make sure that all the hostages are able to be returned home to their families. And so my reaction was, what are we doing to make sure that it is more likely, not less likely, that all the hostages come home, and that we can start down the pathway of returning to the Abraham Accords process that is was in the midst of normalizing relationships between Israel and her Arab neighbors, including and especially Saudi Arabia. I was in the region on October 7th, you may remember, Jose. I have returned to the region and visited many of those Arab countries, and including Israel, multiple times since then, and I'm going back in April on a bipartisan codo. And I co-chair this Congress, the Abraham Accords caucus. So we have to make sure that we're not doing anything that is going to make normalization between Israel and her Arab neighbors less likely rather than more likely. And we don't need to do something that emboldens Hamas and allows them to recruit even more generations of terrorists who are hell-bent on Israel's destruction and the destruction of the Jewish people. And that's what this proposal would incite in terms of the reaction and the destabilizing force that pursuing this idea would have.
This morning, White House National Security Advisor Mike Waltz was asked if the president's comments meant the end of the United States support for a two-state solution. Here's what he had to say.
I don't think, certainly didn't hear the president say it was the end of the two-state solution. You have the Palestinian Authority, you have the West Bank, and when he was asked directly who is going to live there in the future, he said the Palestinians and perhaps many others.
Congressman, I just want you, if you would, to expand on what you were just saying, because we're just entering right now, the world is, this second phase of the negotiations between Israel and Hamas to continue, hopefully bringing those hostages back out of Gaza. What kind of effect do you think all of this talk here could play on those negotiations?
I think that they would place those negotiations in serious jeopardy. If you listen...
Okay, so here's the thing. I mean, I'll try to get through this, but the Democrats... I put a poll question up there. Hi, Melly. Hi, Asher, Ruben Ford. Hi. I put a question in the poll because I really am so disappointed in the response from the Democrats right now. It's like they are in a state of shock and disbelief, but they've been fighting them this whole time. So what are you in shock or disbelief about? And then why don't you have a response ready, prepared, or why haven't you been coming up with one in the last few days? It's only been a very select few Democrats coming out. We're going to go over that in just a second, but this is them on the Senate floor. Hold on, let's take a look here.
Them.
Jose, the fact that the Homeland Security Secretary...
And still I rise, Mr. Speaker. And I rise today, Mr. Speaker, with a to whom it may concern message. To whom it may concern. Ethnic cleansing.
Why is his name Al Green with this cane? Okay, but let's just go.
In Gaza is not a joke, especially when it emanates from the President of the United States, the most powerful.
Oh my God, y'all, we can't do this. Listen. This ain't gonna work. These types of people are not going to work. This man is giving a whole Dr. King type of energy. That's not the time we in. Like, what are you doing? And why is this person up here? How come he's not actively training some young person that has a little bit more fire and vigor in them to stand up and say something? Like, this sucks. And this is what I'm talking about when I'm saying there's these people in Congress who they know how to make things move. If they wanted something to move, they could do it. But it's like they're dispassionate, like their balloon has been popped, like they have nothing to give. Like there's no passion, there's no urgency in the fight. Do y'all know what I'm saying? Like, I just feel like can't go retro. We have to move forward. Like, I feel like this is not going to work. This cane and this, listen, it just seems like this is indicative of where we at right now. No, we have to have a different response. And we have to have somebody that is ready to be more interactive with both the people and also in Congress in a way that's effective. This isn't effective. Listen to this.
Person in the world, when he has the ability to perfect what he says. Ethnic cleansing in Gaza is no joke,
Sorry.
and the Prime Minister of Israel should be ashamed, knowing the history of his people, to stand there and allow such things to be said. Ethnic cleansing has been a crime against humanity. And I stand here today in the well to denounce what...
Hey, don't he seem like Pops from Pops from all the movies? I can't believe this. This is where we at. This is why there isn't any response. I don't want to play the rest of this because this doesn't move anybody. He isn't even moved. He don't care. He just up here because he's supposed to be mad. He just up here because he knows he's supposed to be mad.
Then said to denounce I will bring articles of impeachment against the president for dastardly deeds proposed and dastardly deeds done. I also rise to say that the impeachment movement is going to be a grass-up movement, not a top-down. The people have got to move forward. The people have to demand it. And when the people demand it, it will be...
What are you talking about? Okay. So I agree with him that this Trump presidency is already off the rails. Trump does need to be impeached. But he already knows that the Senate isn't going to pass this impeachment. So if you know that, then why aren't you talking to people about how to get it done from a House of Representatives and a Senate position? Why aren't you educating people on how that works? We need people in the seats that's going to make the right votes. The Republicans right now are okay with this coup d'etat. They're okay with it. They have no problem with it. The Democrats, from what I can see, these Democrats, and I'm not saying this man in particular, because I don't know, but he just doesn't seem like he has any passion. But I don't know what I'm about to say. It's not pertaining to him per se. But I think that there are people who are MAGA, and then there are Americans, right? There's these extremists. But I also feel like there are people who are MAGA red, those ones that wear those red hats. But there's also MAGA blues. People who are Democrats who either agree with what Donald Trump is doing silently but won't publicly say anything, or they'll publicly denounce it but actually believe it, and so they're not going to take any actions to work against it, or they're just scared. But either way, if you're too scared to say something, you're MAGA blue too. Now, I will commend him. He's getting up here saying something. This does need to be on the congressional record that we're calling for an impeachment. I do agree with that, Mr. Al Green, Representative Al Green. And they're in Texas, where they are, this is a big state. So I do appreciate that. However, this isn't where this impeachment is going to start. He's saying it's a grass ups kind of movement. Why aren't the Democrats organizing town halls on how to get the right amount of incumbents in those seats so that we can get the right vote to get him out and forcibly removed from office? If we do this right, we will only have to put up with him for 2 years, because technically we can't, there's not going to be a Senate vote that votes against him getting impeached. So the last time in 2016 that Trump took office, he was impeached 2 times, and both times the Senate slammed it down. They refused it. And it was because the House was stacked with Republicans. And the same thing happened right now. The same thing. So there's no way that he's going to get impeached through the House, through this legal process. So you'll have to put people in those seats that will do the right thing, that will make the right vote. But that starts with talking to people and educating people about the actual political process. Do you know how many people online that I've seen that are in pure regret about the votes that they made? They're regretting that they voted for Donald Trump. But a lot of them saying that they didn't even know about half the things that he was talking about. And people are demonizing them. But here's the thing. Most people are at work during the day. And when you come home, you don't want to hear about politics. All you know is that everything in your life is going up. You work in the same, your pay rate is the same, but everything around you is going up. Right. No, they didn't allow, right. They didn't allow it to go through. At the end of the day, they wouldn't allow him to get impeached. So Donald Trump he's not going to get impeached this time either. It doesn't matter what house it gets introduced. If it gets introduced to the House again, it's not going to work. So right now, what needs to be happening is mobilization in terms of education on how to get the proper incumbents in those seats, period. And both in DC and also around the country. So, but also I do think that there are a lot of older people who are in the Democratic Party who are not connecting with their base. I don't understand why they're not, but they're just not. And so there's a very select few that are even coming out talking about this. And I don't, it's like they're purposely missing the mark on some of it. I want to show you this video with Vosh. This guy, he's kind of funny, but he is, yes, impeachment. If he gets impeached, he has to also he has to be forcibly removed from office. But he has to pass, the impeachment process has to pass both houses. It didn't pass the Senate. It's a law. It's something that, well, Kent Clark, I can clearly see that you are in a cult. But that's okay. You can definitely go ahead and keep your, I don't understand why you're here though. Why are you here? Okay, so let's listen to this video with Vosh, and we're talking about the Democrats and their fight for, let's listen to this.
In answer to a tweet that I said that did this, he said, Doge, quote, is the one shot the American people have.
I can't watch this. I can't watch this. I can't watch this, man. This is going to make me feel worse. I feel worse when I look at the Democrats than I do when I look at the Republicans. When I look at the news and the Republicans are like, we have made it illegal to smile in public, and dog kicking is now mandatory. I'm like, oh, those crazy scamps. And then when I see the Democrats respond to that in the way that they do, it genuinely makes me feel a lot worse. Look at my lawyer, dog. I'm going to the Trump gulags.
Have to defeat bureaucracy and restore democracy.
The true
now, give me
lags.
a break. Nothing screams democracy like having a secret squad of company men pull off a hostile takeover of America's Social Security and tax information in the dead of night. That is not democracy.
That's great, man.
Democracy. We know what democracy's like. It's out in the open. It's not secret. You do two sides debate.
It genuinely is like insane and sickening that of the two parties, the Democrats are the less socially democratic. Like Trump and his cronies do way more to respond to the public interest and shape the public interest than Democrats do. It's insane.
Look, I just think that So this is the head of the Democratic Party, and this is the minority leader of the Democratic Party. But they're giving a press conference about, they're giving a press conference about this response here. But it's the same kind of thing that we just seen on, on the congressional floor. It's still very, I don't know. It's like there is no action to it. Like there isn't any tangible thing that you could be that they're suggesting. It's just this.
Imagine being this bad at understanding what you're.
It's just like they are speaking but not actually saying anything. I don't know if that makes sense.
Base once when you are the Democratic Party, both in name and in intent, and your opposition is fascists,
And then the elected officials make decisions. Democracy doesn't work in the shadows. Democracy doesn't skirt the rule of law. And it doesn't give special privilege to the ideas and needs of a group of ultra-wealthy people at the expense of American families. Of course we should talk about reform.
Also, his suit fits like shit.
Everyone
gaining
agrees
weight,
we should
Schumer?
find ways to improve the effectiveness and efficiency of government. But you know what history shows? When it's done in the dark of night, it always leads to bad results. When these Doge people decide to cut a program, have they even talked to the people who run the program?
I'm sorry, I just realized I didn't actually send the video file over to my editors. That's kind of part of the...
Basically, it's the same thing. It's the same thing as this. It's the same type of energy. Like, it's just very lackluster, and it's not proactive. It's really more of, this is what we're going to do. We're just going to go through this turtle of a process. It's going to be slow. It's going to be like, come on. Like, this is not the response that we need. Like, they're literally talking about going to war with everybody. And y'all talking about go through the legal process? They're not waiting for no legal process. I don't understand why that, like, it's not, y'all not fighting with the same. The response is you're going to lose. You're going to lose. This is why the Democrats lost the election, because of this type of time they on. I don't understand why they're so not into it. They're just not into politics anymore. It just seems like that. Like there's no fight in them. You said the Democratic, it says you figure black people will start leaving the Democrat who wanted to keep slavery. Well, both parties own slaves. So I mean, if you're only talking about the party per se, then neither party would work. But you do have to. These are the two political parties that we do have. So you have to find a way to make your voice known, especially to the federal government, and that's through voting. One of the ways is through voting. So, and then you said the Democrats are completely owned and operated by the New World Order. There's nothing good is going to come from them. Democrat Party is over. Well, I do think that the Democrat Party, their light is dim. I don't think that the Democrat Party is over. Also, the Republican Party is completely cooked. They're completely are out to lunch. They have completely lost their minds. They're so drunk on hatred for their neighbor, hatred for themselves. They worship this man, and they worship money so much that they are willing to go with Trump and Elon Musk and this whole thing. The problem is that they are powered by this notion that they're going to be able to rule the world by threatening everybody, intimidating people, and real life going to war. But yeah, I do think that the Republican Party is cooked. Black community is waking up to the Democrats' social manipulation, and I'm here for it. The Democrats, they don't. The one thing about the Democrats is that it's almost like they are here as a placeholder. To me, that's what it is. That's what kind of what it feels like. They're just a placeholder party, and they're only going to do what they have to do. If they don't have to do it, then they're definitely not going to do it. They're not going to make any suggestions. And the only ones that really do want to make any changes are more on the younger side that want to see actual changes. Because it shouldn't have taken they're threatening to go to war with everybody, but it should not have gotten there. Trump shouldn't have had to threaten going to war in order for you to actually take a stand for something, because there's other things in this country that should be being fought for. There is no Democrat Party. Those are New World Order operatives trying to pull off the New World Order takeover. That would be on either side. So the New World Order is not partisan. The New World Order is any party and apolitical. It only wants power and control. It doesn't care. It will use parties. It will use political parties. It will use economics. It will use capitalism. It will use race. It will use gender. It will use war. It will use anything. It's not, the New World Order has nothing to do with just party. If you only think in a linear way, you're gonna fall for the okie doke. The New World Order doesn't care about any party per se. It cares about how it can be used to, advance its own position. The Republican Party will pretend Trump never happened, just like Bush Jr. The Republican Party, remember when January 6th happened, a lot of them were really, some of them spoke out against what happened once they got arrested. Some of those people got arrested. But a lot of them were very quiet, very quiet. They didn't want to talk about it. They didn't want to say that they had egg on their face. They didn't want to really get into it. But the moment that Trump released those people, there was like loud cheers all over social media. You were hearing about them in groups and Facebook posts and all this, and I'm just like, wow, that's so interesting. But yeah, the Republican Party will pretend Trump never happened, just like Bush. Look, if we can get out of this mess in one piece, that would be amazing. But I don't think that's going to happen overnight at all. I think that this is going to go on for some time because of the lackluster opposition. And the only real opposition that has been happening, that has been giving Trump some pushback, that has gotten him to back down, is the opposition from the proletariat here, the American proletariat, in all the different forms. And when the governments themselves push back. So when Mexico pushed back, when Canada pushed back, when even Panama pushed back, because he was talking about they was going to straight up go to war. I'm like, wow, that's wild. You saw that is crazy. Do you know that our military is we don't have the numbers that we did have a long time ago. We don't have the numbers to be going to war like that. That's crazy. So he said the Dems are corrupted, vote everyone out. So there's corruption in every government, period. But what it needs to happen is that we need to all be aware of this. And it needs to be, the awareness about this will allow us to vote correctly in the next elections. Because people, just like Trump lied to his base, lied, people will not tell you who they are until they get what they want. You see what's happening with Trump right now? A lot of people that voted for him didn't think that this would be as wild as it is. But it is. But he's not going to tell you up front that he had anything to do with Project 2025. He didn't tell. The one thing he said on the trail is that he didn't have nothing to do with it. He didn't really know anything about it. But he's promoting all these people in his cabinet that have everything to do with those think tanks that came up with Project 2025. There's a bunch of different organizations associated with Project 2025, and they're working on that for a very long time before, um, you know, before they, they are, I believe they are the ones that came up with, that gave Trump the whole rundown on how to do this right here, right now. I don't think he just came up with it by himself. So do y'all not realize they're trying everything to get Trump out, because all the BS the Democrats have been doing is about to be exposed? We have a real leader now. Get used to it. Who's the leader? Elon Musk? Because we know Donald Trump ain't no leader. He got elected to be president, but he's definitely not a leader. That's two different things. Being president and being a leader is two different things for sure. And quiet as kept, neither is Elon Musk, because he can't run his companies either. His companies are so pumped up full of air that as soon as that bubble pop, all his wealth is gone. And he's going to owe a whole bunch of people money because he's taking loans out on all that inflated stock. You fascists have destroyed the rule of law. You know what's so interesting? When these people, these loyalists of Trump, they call people fascists, they are typically the fascists. The projection is real with this group. It's so interesting. They're usually it's like this obsession, like they're in love. They're like in this fantasy world of in love with Donald Trump. It's so weird. Sending people to Gitmo, threatening our neighbor countries. So you're against Trump banning trans men to women, going against real women in sports. I'm against Trump being at war with what he deems is DEI, or diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is everybody that isn't a white man. That's what I'm at war with Trump with. I am. Because with Trump, you don't get to pick and choose what you agree with him with. Either you with him all the way or you're not. And I'm not no Trump worshiping nothing. First, you have to understand there's only two sides, the New World Order against all of the rest of us. What you're seeing Trump and his cabinet do is take on the New World. Can you explain how they're taking on the New World Order? And can you tell me what it is that they're doing in opposition? Because to me, it sounds like they're using that playbook and they're doing exactly what you say the New World Order is. Bernie is pro Big Pharma. I do believe that he took some money from Pharma, but I don't know the companies or how much. The people have voted. Cry more. Oh, I'm not crying. I'm sitting here exposing this. And at the end of the day, that's the one thing I'm not going to do, is sit here and cry about it. Because it's one thing is for certain. Trump is going to back himself up against a wall, because all he's doing is ruining the relationship of all the people that he even made relationships with. That President Putin is showing nude photos of Melania Trump all on Russian TV because he don't like Trump. He's mocking Trump on Russian TV. Did you know that? You know that Russian TV is state-run TV, right? So Putin owns the TV station, the media out there. They can't just do whatever they want. So Putin is putting Melania's naked photo on TV because he don't like Trump. That is so crazy. But I'm not crying, because one thing for certain is Putin and China, Russia and China, are allies. Donald Trump is very much against. It's so crazy is that he's so against China, but Elon Musk is one of China's biggest manufacturers. He's one of the biggest. It's such a conflict. He's such a hypocrite. You said the status quo that's done nothing but hurt everybody is being challenged. I don't know exactly what you mean by that. Because if you're talking about Donald Trump being the status quo, Donald Trump is the deep state that they're talking about. He's part of the. Jeffrey Epstein came out and said that Donald Trump was his longtime friend. They have been friends for a long time. But let's look at this video of Steve Bannon breaking down how Trump, this is from some years ago, but this is still relevant today. Let's take a look.
Baseball leagues or basketball leagues, etc. You just learn you got to stand up for yourself and you got to fight.
Let's just start with the backstory. The Steve Bannon kid, the brawler, your brother said, right? In what way?
Well, I mean, it was our neighborhood became it was kind of white working class, lower middle class, old internal suburb of a old city, Richmond. So it was inside the city limits, very close to downtown, and it became predominantly black in the 60s. And my parents, wouldn't leave. That was our neighborhood. So it was a pretty, it was a fairly tough, north side of Richmond is a fairly tough section of town. And you just kind of, I was raised in a, working class Irish Catholic family. Went to a military prep school, and it was just kind of just raised to not back down. If you believe in something, you believe in something, and you can't. If you show any weakness in a neighborhood, like it's quite Darwinian as a young person, right? If you show weakness, you're going to just get picked on and bullied and all that. So you just learn from the playgrounds, and you learn from the schools and the sports. There was no big organized little league or anything like that. Everything was kind of inner city baseball leagues or basketball leagues, etc. You just learn you got to stand up for yourself and you got to fight. And if you fight, people give you some space. And if you don't fight, it's just you're it's not a great life. So it was just it wasn't any big deal. It was kind of like breathing air.
So I remember the story about your dad that you told. It almost felt like a one switch gets turned on and young Steve Bannon, or you're grown up by then, but it goes to this idea of trust in the government, trust in your company, trust that your dad had for his retirement accounts.
Well, look, we're Irish Catholic, the Catholic Church, the Bell, my grandfather and father, I think the only two guys in the history of the Bell system to be both 50-year employees. My grandfather worked there 50 years as a lineman and a PBX guy, and my dad was 50 years, started in the sewer pulling cable and worked for 50 years. So the father and son worked 50 years for the phone company. So you had these big institutions. I was fortunate enough to be raised in a great time in America, right? The 50s and 60s, but he believed in these big institutions, the Catholic Church, the phone company, and these were permanent fixtures in your life, and it's kind of that stability. I came from a neighborhood that was a little bit tough, but it was not like it was a very solid, great background. As I go throughout the world and meet these very wealthy people I deal with all the time and see their kids, the greatest thing you can give a kid is that kind of basic core loving family that's there and rock solid. So the family, the church, the community, the phone company, these are institutions. And so institutions are everything. It's a very institutional life when you think about it, and quite hierarchical, but it gives you a set framework that you can grow and be, get to be an adult, and there's a real sense of something that's solid there, something that's real. And I think that's what broke down the financial crisis. I mean, my father he would tell me stories back in the Depression about one of the things about his father working at the phone company is that they never laid anybody off during the Great Depression. My dad was born in 1921, and as a very young person, he remembers all the neighborhood fathers got let go. His dad still had a job. The phone company didn't let anybody go. He also told stories about the borrowing against, they had like 1 or 2 shares of stock, which was everything. And they would borrow against the stock to like buy the house and buy, I think the house cost like $2,500 or something in the 30s to build. They borrowed against their AT&T stock. AT&T, the Bell system, incentivized working class people to put X amount of their income away and actually become a shareholder. And being a shareholder in the phone company, that's what my dad's entire net worth was. And so when, after the collapse, a couple of days after the collapse, when Kramer went on TV, Jim Cramer went on TV and CNBC, and that morning just goes, hey, if you need cash in like the next 5 years of your life, I mean, he's in full panic. If you watch the video, it's quite shocking. It's shocking CNBC actually let him on. But he's sitting there going, if you need cash in the next 5 years, you just got to sell everything and go to cash. Because we don't know where the bottom of this is. And 2 days later, remember, I'd been at Goldman Sachs, and not only my dad asked me my opinion, a couple of days later, he sold all of his AT&T. He would have sold his stock in a Catholic church before he sold his stock in AT&T. And he sold his stock. That struck me as that this is a crisis of the institutions of our country, right? This is a massive, we now have a institutional crisis when guys like Marty Bannon, who the country's this kind of steady Eddie guy, whose whole thing is to raise a family, to be there for the family, to be there for his community. These are the kind of building blocks that civic society is built upon. When guys like that are questioning the system and dumping their ownership in the system can't go on like that. You're now in a real crisis.
It felt to me when we were watching, we made a number of films about it, and one of the things that happened in the cascade, because we make political films, we were thinking about, let's talk about Sarah Palin, for example, somebody who could identify in some way what that was, what that fear and that anger was, probably in your dad and lots of dads and moms all over the country.
Well, it's one of the reasons I came back. I was living in Shanghai. I was actually living in Shanghai at the time. I was living in the French concession, spending most of my time there. I had a massively multiplayer video game company that had a big Asian presence in Hong Kong, Kowloon, South Korea, and in China. So I was living there. Came back because I thought there were some financial problems. I was going to sell real estate, but then my sister pointed me to this woman, Sarah Palin, had just been named, was going to be the vice president. I actually went to the Republican convention as just with a filmmaking guy. The guy that produced the Passion of the Christ, Steve McAvity, and went to the Republican and saw something unique in Palin and saw her go around. People forget when the financial crisis, when Lehman was put into bankruptcy, which was put into bankruptcy, I think on the morning of September 15th in London, right? And then it cascaded down. The smartest guys in the room didn't realize that the commercial paper market, the global commercial paper market, which is the way that every company in the world gets its working capital to kind of, make payroll and to pay for the lights going on and for the janitors and for everything that's paid, the GE, the biggest companies in the world, the commercial paper market, every day you're selling commercial paper to provide working capital. When that froze up on the morning of the 15th, the whole system froze up. On that date, Sarah Palin and John McCain, I think, were up 1 point in the Gallup poll on Barack Obama. People forget, Palin came with such force out of that thing for the first 2 weeks before she started to be kind of destroyed. They were on fire. It was in that sequence of events that week, I think, talks about the corruption of our institutions. And I think it talks about how the elites are comfortable with decline. Remember, on that Thursday morning, Monday goes into bankruptcy. By Thursday, there's a crisis that nobody knows what's going on. In this commercial paper market, the whole way that the whole entire global system is financed is now frozen up. And that's when you have Bernanke and Hank Paulson, who are not alarmists, particularly not Bernanke. And he's an expert. Remember, he's an expert in the Great Depression. That's his claim to fame. That's where his PhD is in. They go to the Oval Office to go see Bush. And they have a meeting, and they tell him, hey, and we know all of this by congressional testimony later. So these are the facts. They go to him and says, hey, by 5 o'clock today, we need $1 trillion of cash infusion into the system, or the American financial system will collapse in 72 hours. The world financial system will collapse 48 hours after that, and we will have global anarchy and chaos. And Bush goes, that's interesting, but the White House counsel, we kind of checked the Constitution. I don't really have authority to do that. You got to go over to Capitol Hill. It's kind of their problem. And so they go up to Capitol Hill. They go to Nancy Pelosi's office in the afternoon, and they have the same meeting. In fact, they got to keep their Blackberries outside. It's so confidential, and they talk in there about they need this cash infusion. That's when Hank Paulson gets on his knees to Nancy Pelosi and makes some sort of pitch to her. The country's in literally what the Germans and the Japanese, military and the Soviets, what nobody could ever do to us. Osama bin Laden, nobody. We've now done to ourselves. We have literally caused a financial crisis that will bring down the entire system in 72 hours. The biggest revolutionaries that have gone after the United States could never dream of what we had done to ourselves. And so that began a cascade of, and here's the thing, nobody has ever been held accountable for it. Nobody's ever taken responsibility for it. And it just kind of, that's why, that we have never recovered.
Well,
We've never recovered from that catastrophe.
Somebody's been held accountable, which is probably why we have Donald Trump sitting in the White House now. It's conceivable to me, and you and I can talk about it, what happens politically among the group that become the deplorables to Hillary Clinton, the forgotten to Donald Trump.
The bang that went off on November 9th of 2016 at 2:30 in the morning was lit in the Oval Office on September 18th of 2008. It was lit right in that room. Now, because it was lit, that fuse, that long fuse that has this populist explosion, exploded late. But every financial crisis, I think, in at least modern history, is always followed by some sort of populist. Right now, sometimes that devolves into fascism and other things. But every time there's a financial collapse of this, and remember, this is the biggest financial collapse in the country's history. This is bigger than the Great Depression. This is bigger than the one in the 1870s that caused such a big problem. This is bigger than the one that caused the Federal Reserve in the early 20th century. This is the biggest financial collapse in American history. And this was one that was not done just by simple Ponzi schemes. This was done by an organized, thought-through effort of the financial and corporate elites that knew it was going. Remember, the scams pulled off here are absolutely outrageous. And so that's why you had this immense collapse. You had so many of the elites making so much money. Then when it collapsed, they wanted the taxpayers, the whole thing of the $1 trillion. The Federal Reserve didn't call all the financial institutions together and the corporations say, hey boys, we got a problem, right? This is a problem and we need to pass the hat. You got to cough up some cash. That $1 trillion was from Marty Bannon.
The hit print, right?
The hit print, the hit print, but the guy's going to pay for it is the little guy.
Yeah.
We live in neo-feudalism. This is not capitalism.
Exactly.
This is where you have a underclass, right? A lumpen proletariat almost that's taken care of by the state.
Yeah.
You have the very wealthy, and you have this kind of neo-feudalist working class and middle class in the middle that pays for everything. And the guys at the top, we've socialized the risk. That $1 trillion of infusion, right? Remember, the balance sheet of the Federal Reserve on the morning of September 18th, 2008, when they're in the Oval Office talking, is $880 billion. The balance sheet of the Federal Reserve on January 17th or January 20th of 2017, when Donald Trump raises his hand, is $4.5 trillion. The most progressive president in the history of our country, President Obama, saved the wealthy. And here's how they did it. They just turned on the taps of liquidity. We call it, the technical term is quantitative easing. The not technical term is called bailing out the people who are guilty.
Exactly.
Okay? So essentially, if you owned anything, you had the greatest 10-year run in history.
Mm-hmm.
Wait.
Yeah.
Let's move to the TARP vote and whether you think, so now all of that is happening.
You have to do TARP. The first one you have to do.
Yeah.
You know why? Your fiduciary, when a guy like Bernanke walks in and says, I need $1 trillion, right? You don't have time to debate. History's going to look at you. And he says, the American financial system is going to collapse in 72 hours and the world financial system 2 days after that. You have global anarchy. There's not a person on earth. I don't hear these libertarians and all these, free market, let capitalism take place. No. When they come in and ask for the first $1 trillion in an emergency, I believe you have to say, okay, we got to do it. I don't know what went on here, but if you tell me this is going to save me and at least get down the road, I'll do it. But remember, that's the first $1 trillion. We kept on for another $3.5 trillion. $3.5 trillion.
And here's the thing. He's talking about how Obama in 2008 bailed out the banks. He bailed out the banks and gave them a bunch of tax cuts. And for 10 years, they rolled on all that money. And then when Joe Biden took office, it was more of the same. There was still some. Soon as Obama left office, Donald Trump came in, and he gave the wealthy even more tax cuts. This is what the Democrats are talking about right now. How they're talking about that expires this year. That tax cut, that really, really, really big tax cut that Donald Trump gave back in 2016. They're still riding on that wave, but they've been riding since 2008, really, when Obama initially gave them that when he bailed out the banks. But not everybody was involved in that, so it was really more of the banks. And AOC said also it's the defense sector of our government as well. They give a lot of government contracts, and a lot of these tech companies, fintech companies, are being labeled as defense contractors. This is why they say, allegedly there's people on the board at Twitter or X. There's people on the board at Facebook. There's people on the board on different social media sites, even Reddit, to where this is how they're getting their funding, because they're contracting and then people stay on the board. And then I'm sure that there's other things that they do too, but ultimately there's a bunch of money that's being given to all these people. And this is what he's talking about right here. Now, this man is the strategist for Donald Trump from 2016, but Donald Trump is using the same playbook, but he's speed running that same playbook. So he's going to talk to you about this is kind of old, but he actually still wears this outfit. I don't know why he wears the same shirt and jacket. I don't know. But if you see him now, you'll see him in this outfit, but he's been wearing this. But this is an old video. This is from like 5 or 6 years ago.
This is just bailing out the people that caused the problems. Got to think about it for a second. Goldman Sachs didn't lose any equity. None of the partners really missed any bonus payments. None of GE still in business. AIG, it all still exists. All the donors. Okay, the reverse side of this, remember, there is a corollary to this. It's quite powerful. And we know from the notes of the Federal Reserve, a guy named Richard Fisher, the president of the Federal Reserve of Dallas, argued this in the room constantly. He said, by doing this quantitative easing, which you're just flooding the zone with liquidity, we will save the institutions. And we will save anybody that's a big real estate holder or a hedge fund or bank. But he said, there's a huge reverse here. Number one, savings accounts, you're going to go to zero interest rates. Savings accounts are going to go to zero. So 5,000 years of the Western tradition, back to the Marty Bannons, which is be a good householder. Get a wife, get a mortgage, get some kids, and you save your money. Well, now if you save money, you're a sucker. Yeah. Because it's broken the trust. That's the trust is broken. If you save money, you're a jerk. Yeah. Because you're not going to get any interest rate. In fact, the bank's going to charge you. So there's been you can't put money away to save into the system. Number two, the pension funds. The pension funds are going to be destroyed. Today we have a $9.5 trillion gap between the obligations of the pension funds and what we've earned off the pension funds. Why? Because it went to zero interest rates, and the bonds they can buy have no juice in them. Right? The other thing is public schools and all this. Even communities that are not leveraged can't issue bonds because there's no juice in the bonds because the negative interest rate is 1.5%. We've essentially put the burden on the bailout on the working class and middle class. Exactly. That's why nobody owns anything. Right. But the millennials today are nothing but the 19th century Russian serfs. They're better fed. They're better clothed. They're in better shape. They have more information than anybody in the world at any point in time. But they don't own anything. They're not going to own anything. Okay, and they're 20%. If you mark in time against their parents, they're 20% behind in their income, and there's no pension plan in the future. They're all gig economy. We've literally destroyed the middle class in this country. Yeah. Okay. And both political parties. By the way, this is not about Republicans and Democrats. Right. This is the way the system works, and this is the way the system comes together to protect itself and to move itself forward. Okay. And so because nobody understands even the rudimentaries of finance, right? And they keep the public kind of economically illiterate, right? This allows to go on. And now we're in that crisis, what Trump understood.
Wait, don't go to Trump yet. Okay. So we've created this world of unhappy people. The middle class is shrinking and destroyed. in lots of ways. We're going to catch back up with it in a minute, okay? But now let's go to
No.
you, Breitbart, coming here, coming out of Los Angeles, coming to Washington with what kind of a plan, what kind of an idea, what was Breitbart in Los Angeles, and what does Breitbart become in Washington?
Well, Andrew had been Matt Drudge editor. He had been one of the launch editors for Ariane Huffington and the Huffington Post. He always had a vision of what a news site could be.
Hold on. Hold on really quick. I'll be right back.
The
Oh,
immigration
sorry.
and the H-1B
Sorry
visas
about
are the
that.
same thing in the tech area. That you don't have to hire American citizens. I can do it with these visas to increase margins. Trade is the same thing. Trade is just you're competing against foreign labor in foreign countries unfairly. And so all of it is to suppress workers' wages and to have higher margins, therefore higher stock price concept.
Let's
We're vulnerable
go back
because
a
there's a
little
huge
bit.
disconnect. Remember, the one thing is Democrats have lined up. They have actually, at least here recently, donors and their base kind of line up. The Republican Party is totally dysfunctional. It's essentially a working class party. The votes all come from working class or lower middle class people predominantly, right? And it doesn't represent their interests. This book written by a guy called, What's the Matter with Kansas, where he kind of walks through how the donor class, the singers and the Kochs, these kind of libertarians have this entirely different concept, this kind of Austrian school of economics concept that the political apparatchiks, remember the consulting class, the political class around it, and the donors all line up perfectly. Unfortunately, you've got a working class party that, for instance, trade, massive legal immigration, which the Chamber of Commerce pushes all the time, and more legal immigration, and the trade are just two sides of the same coin. Right? The two sides of the same coin, it's suppression of workers' wages. Okay, massive legal immigration is to flood the zone against predominantly black and Hispanic working class so that you've got unlimited labor pool and you can keep wages down for higher margins. The immigration and the H-1B visas are the same thing in the tech area, that you don't have to hire American citizens. I can do it with these visas to increase margins. Trade is the same thing. Trade is just you're competing against foreign labor in foreign countries unfairly. And so all of it is to suppress workers' wages and to have higher margins, therefore higher stock prices, therefore more wealth, of which the workers don't own any piece of. And so our thesis was the not just the cultural stuff, but the economic stuff. You have an ability to reform this Republican Party and make it a true populist entity.
But they weren't going to let that happen. They were going to resist that in almost...
They did, and we took them down. We took down Cantor. Remember, we took down Cantor with Dave Brat. We took the first time in the history of the Republic that a sitting majority leader had ever been beaten. Remember, he was beaten in a primary. That Cantor was up here in D.C. on the day of the primary and schlepped down there last night. Fox News, and they came on last night, didn't even know Dave Brat's name. This was unknown, and we had worked it with Laura Ingraham. I mean, Breitbart had been all over this. We had Dave Brat on our radio show, I think, every week for the 10 weeks run up to the election. We saw real vulnerability.
Did you know it was coming?
You definitely know it was coming. That was also happened to be my home district, but I could feel it. I knew that a guy like Brackett, they were very weak. They were very weak. They didn't have a grasp, and this Tea Party revolt was picking up. So, you had the huge Tea Party revolt in 2010, which we won 62 seats. The Republican Party didn't see that coming. That was all grassroots oriented, which played out over time. Remember, today, the 2000, really Obama's 08, and particularly the primaries, and the 2010, I think changed American politics pretty fundamentally, because the concept got to be mobilization versus persuasion. I don't believe we live in an era of persuasion anymore. People are so saturated with this all day long, they kind of know where they come out. You just got to motivate them to get out there and vote. You got to motivate them to go door to door. So the 08 Obama primary that completely caught Clinton by surprise was all about mobilization. The 2010 Tea Party, particularly the House part of it, that was absolutely, the biggest in the history, I think, since the Great Depression, 1932, was about mobilization. That's why Romney didn't want to have anything to do with it in 12, right? He washed his hands of it. And that's why in this very room in January 2013, they had this huge controversy between the Republican Party did the autopsy. They said, the reason that Romney lost was because we didn't reach out to the Hispanic community, we didn't talk about DACA, we didn't talk about open borders, immigration policy. And a young guy named Stephen Miller, who was on the staff, he'd been with Michelle Bachmann for the Tea Party revolt. We were very close to Stephen Miller and Jeff Sessions and myself had a dinner in this very room at basically the same week that Rupert Murdoch and Roger Ailes had this dinner with Schumer and Rubio in New York to talk about the Gang of Eight bill. And we just came down and looked at this. There was a lawyer at Hunt and Williams in Richmond that wrote a 3-part piece, I believe it was, for Real Clear Politics. His name is Sean Trendy. He looked at the same analysis coming out of 2012, which, remember, all the donors thought Romney was going to win in a landslide. He looked at the same thing and said, the inability of the Republican Party to connect with working class voters is the single biggest reason that they're not winning. And that's where Sessions and I talked about, we're going to take trade from number 100, right? It's not an issue. The whole Republican Party's got this fetish on free trade. They're like automatons. Oh, free trade, free trade, free trade, which is a radical idea, particularly when you're against a mercantilist opponent like China. So we're going to make trade from number 100 to number 2, and we're going to take immigration from about number 3 to number 1. The 1 and 2 issues will be immigration and trade, and that will be focused on workers, right? And we're going to remake the Republican Party. In fact, I'd asked...
Wait a minute, that's like the anti-autopsy...
the 180% out. Autopsy, and I told Ryan Slater to his face, it was a total joke and another donor-driven lie. Okay, no statistics, and the victory in 2016 showed that. And by the way, all the guys in the verticals, the Jeb Bushes and the Marco Rubios and all these other guys, Chris Christie, all the geniuses and their staffs all bought into the autopsy. Remember, they thought we were crazy. We had Palin in 8 and hoped that she had run in 12, and she just, it just didn't work out. I actually worked with Lou Dobbs and tried to get Lou Dobbs to run in 12 as a populist, because it was Lou Dobbs' economic ideas on his TV show all the time, particularly China and immigration and trade. And Lou Dobbs, for a host of reasons, didn't do it. And here, I actually tried to talk Sessions into doing it. I told Sessions, just like I told Palin, you're not going to be president of the United States. But remember, if we win the primary, and you will win the primary, you control the Republican apparatus. You take over the RNC for the whole next cycle. You can turn the RNC, you can turn the Republican Party into a worker-based party. The goal is to get control of the party. You're not going to win the presidency against this. That'll take time. And Sessions goes, I remember he said, it was about 5 hours, we walked down those front steps, and he turns to me and goes, it's not me, I'm not going to do it. He says, but our guy will come along. We'll find our guy. And that guy, a couple of years later, turned out to be Donald Trump.
So you go hunting for a guy, and
100%.
You're banging him hard. You're banging Boehner and everybody else hard on the front page of Breitbart. And so help me with the understanding of the growth of Breitbart through those 2 years while you're...
Oh, it's fine. I think when Andrew passed away, the night we opened the site, I think if you go back and check, I think we were 10 million. I think we were 10 million uniques. Excuse me, we're 10 million page views a month. I think we're 1.5 million uniques. I think the total time on site, total time was 90 seconds, and 70% of our traffic was coming from Drudge. Okay, at the height of the game, I think later in August, when I left in August of 2016, I think we were 300 million page views a month, 40 million uniques, people staying on site 5 minutes. It was a whole different deal. It was a combination of, we were, number one, we were new. Andrew's site, it was news, not opinion. We didn't put any, our opinion was in the news. Well, but look, it's like the editorial page of the New York Times is on the front page. Yeah. Okay, if the New York Times didn't publish, CNN would be a test pattern every day. Okay, look, it's all partisan. It all comes from what I call an angle of attack. We're partisans. And we put it right into our news, and people read it and know it. The facts are the facts. You can dispute the facts, but the angle of attack is right in there. So it's going to be hard hitting, populist, nationalist. We're going to have heroes and enemies.
Who's reading it? Who's reading that then?
We caught on with this kind of working class, middle class audience. We made this stuff very intelligent. We had these radio shows that were listener based. We got people engaged. The comment section, which is not for the uninitiated, I took off almost virtually all controls on the thing. We had monitors to stop the really bad guys, but I got lit up more. The reason that all the conservative media had gotten away from comments is that most of the comments are attacking the writers and the editors. And, we took it off and said, hey, we're building a community here. And it was the comment section that started to build some of the power of Breitbart, coupled with, we were just smarter. We had amazing search engine optimization. There was a merger of technology and content. Search engine optimization, and particularly I had an entire team that did nothing but deconstruct the algorithms of Facebook. Without Facebook, Breitbart could have never gotten to the size it got. You saw the Harvard study where we were the most powerful news organization in the 2016. That was all by design. We literally focused on being able to deliver a punch, okay? And we did it just like the guys at Harvard did. We did it by understanding Facebook, understanding search engine optimization, maximizing the technology part of it, and also comments to build community, to have people have ownership in this, right?
Well, and also understanding that there was a division in America, and half the division didn't have a voice.
This whole thing on division too. It's the taproot of democracy. What you want is engagement. Okay, the left was doing it with talking points memo and everything. That you want engagement. We just had in 2018 a midterm election. 113 million people voted. Democracy in America has never been more robust. And one of the reasons it's robust is you've got these sites like Breitbart, and on the left you got Talking Points Memo and the Huffington Post that have people engaged. They have people buying in. They have people passionate about this. Okay, now it's permeated not just political culture because of Trump and now people like AOC, etc. It's permeated popular culture. We now have the most engaged political. The country is all about politics. Every dinner party you go to, every conversation you have, Saturday Night Live, all the late night comics. If you look back at Johnny Carson's era, and you look back at the Tonight Show and all this, he have maybe a few jokes about Reagan at the beginning, but now the heart of the nightly setup of Kimmel and all the Tonight Show and all that is politics. And why is that? You now have people that are engaged. They've bought in, and it's aspirational. It's part of their lifestyle. It's like you wear a certain brand of shirt, you have a certain brand of politics. Right. And this is what I mean by mobilization. We're not in an era of persuasion anymore. Everybody, there's so many, since the social media has disintermediated the traditional media aspects, and that's one of the things Andrew understood, is that now it's part of your life. It's an aspirational lifestyle brand that you're either a progressive Democrat, a reactionary Republican, a Trump guy wearing a red hat, or somebody that believes in AOC and thinks Trump's a devil. That's all fine. You've bought into that, and that's where you go. So people say it's divided. Yes, the country's been divided before, and people got to come to this and make their own decisions, but it's very divided, and the media has definitely added to that by reinforcing and also presenting to people the news in a certain way.
Fantastic. So, thank you. That section's done. Next section, Trump, the campaign, all of that. Does he find you or do you find him? Are you two guys looking for each other? What is it? What happens between the two of you?
Well, he
How do
comes.
you first
He
meet?
comes.
Now, so this part right here, he's going to get into, how he met Trump and all, how Trump eventually got into uh, politics in a way that he eventually runs for office. But he also talks about the strategy that they use, which is relevant to what is happening today. Again, this man planned all the stuff that you just heard. It was him talking about how he was already prepping to get somebody in office under the Republican banner, but he was nursing the Republican Party, and he was just finding a candidate that could deliver or put the cherry on top. So for him, that was Donald Trump. But he was looking for all different kind of people, if you notice it. But this is the man that went and gave Donald Trump the strategy that he's working with today. And he kind of goes over this, but this is years ago. But what Trump is doing today, you'll hear it in what he's talking about.
I in 2010, I'm making these films for Dave Bossie, Citizens United. I just made Generation Zero, which is about the financial collapse, and that's where I kind of made my chops in the conservative media area. We were on Fox. That film is about this new generation that's not going to own anything, right? So I made that film in 2009. So I'm making films. I'm making 3 films for the 2010 midterm, all about, and I'm editing for Bossie, and Bossie calls me up and says, "What are you doing tomorrow?" And I said, "What do you mean what I'm doing? I'm at your studio editing these 3 films, and we got to get out in 4 weeks." He says, "Well, can you go to New York?" I go, "No, I can't." He says, "Well, you got to go with me. I'm going to see Donald Trump." And I go, "Well, look, I don't need to see Donald Trump. I don't know Donald Trump. I don't care to know Donald Trump." He goes, "Well, you got to come with me because he's thinking of running for president." And I said, "What country?" And so we get on the train, and we're talking. We go up there on Amtrak, and I said, "I'm there for one reason. I'm the Tea Party populist guy." I'm supposed to explain to him, because Dave's a traditional limited government conservative. He loves the Tea Party, but he doesn't quite get what this whole thing's about. So he's going to walk through the whole thing of a primary and all the technical stuff. I'm going to add the juice. So we go there, and it's amazing. We sit in the same conference room that 6 years later, the Billy Bush weekend and all this stuff is going to play out. The exact same spot. In fact, Trump and I sit kind of in the same location where the final decision on not doing the TV shows about Billy Bush weekend, which is really what saved his candidacy.
What's your first read of the guy? What's his aspect? What'd you think?
Well, I was not looking, I had no interest in the meeting because I'd never watched the show. I just remembered him as a guy that was bankrupt all the time and a guy Goldman Sachs would never finance, so he's not in my radar scope, just a promoter. I get in there and I was number one, blown away by his presence. People like Palin and Obama and these people, there's something about their charisma and something about their ability to own a room. Trump walks in and he owns a room. There's a presence about the guy that I was not, because I didn't take him very seriously. We sit down, it's a 2-hour meeting. He doesn't know a lot because he's not supposed to. It's not that he's not, it's all about politics and very specific. And he doesn't know any policy, which he shouldn't. He's a real estate guy and a TV guy. He doesn't know any policy. Dave's walking through this. But what struck me, I talk about populism. And I say, I give him the history of populism when Andrew Jackson, when James Bryan, bring him up to date with Ross Perot, everything like that. And he turns to me and goes, "That's what I am." I go, "What?" He goes, "A popularist." I go, No, it's populist." And he goes, "Yeah, I got it, popularist." And I go, No, it's populist. And after I said it the second time, Bossie gives me the kick under the table. He says populist, I let it go. And then he turns on about China. And we get into this conversation about China. And we talk about trade, we talk about non-trade barriers, talk about the South China Sea, we talk about currency manipulation. Of a 2-hour meeting, the China thing is 20 or 30 minutes long. It's the one thing he knows. And I realize he's regurgitating my guy Lou Dobbs. But I'm telling you, it's the one thing, he's engaged and he's got well-formed opinions. So we leave the meeting. Bossie says, I'm on the train on the way back, Bossie says, "What you thinking?" I'm sitting there going, I've been thinking about it. His thing on popularist, I was wrong and he was right. And he goes, "What do you mean?" He says, "You wouldn't let off on that. That's why I kicked you." And I said, "Yeah, I was trying to give him the standard thing." He thinks of things differently. He is a popularist. He's not a populist. He thinks about things from himself. And I said, "That's pretty amazing. He was actually right and I was wrong." And Bossie goes, "Yeah, I could tell that." And then he says, "What else? What about this China thing? You guys went on China forever." I go, "Dave, here's the amazing thing. I can't, in Washington, D.C., outside maybe some nudge at a think tank, have the conversation I just had with this guy in China. Nobody will talk about non-trade barriers. Nobody would talk about currency manipulation. They couldn't pick South China Sea. He talks about the South China Sea. I said, it's amazing to me. He actually has what I think is one of the biggest threats, if not the biggest threat we got coming. He understands China better than anybody in the city. And that is going to be, and he says, what do you think? I said, no chance this guy will run. It will never happen. He'll never run for president. But
So you sort of park him.
I just kind of dismiss it. And later, Bossie gave him two things to do. I said, you got to have two answers to this guy leaving. And Bossie did. He said, number one, you've got to give in the maximum of the $2,500. You got to give to every congressman and every senator running, and make them come to Trump Tower, look you in the eye, shake your hand. It's not a marker, but you're getting into the system. So I think that came to $500,000 something. The second is you got to write a policy book. And so I would tease Dave. Hey, Dave says, what do you think? I said, there's no chance he writes any checks. Zero. And I said, number two, he'll never write a policy book.
Why did you know that about him? About the?
I know guys like Trump. I just see Trump. He's not right. You're writing him a check. He's not writing you a check. It's not going to happen, right? Unless he's got some sort of problem in a city about a casino, you're not getting a check, okay? Right. Not for some congressman from Kansas. His mind doesn't think like that. So I would keep teasing Bossie, and eventually I said, how's that 500,000? How many of those meetings you had? How many hands did you shaking in Trump Tower, right? And eventually Dave calls me up. He wrote a $250,000 check, I think, to Karl Rove's general fund, like 3 weeks ago, and bitched and moaned about it the whole time. Now here's the interesting thing. The guy who's a managing editor for me, Winton Hall, is one of the great ghostwriters out there. Once a year we give him permission to ghostwrite a book. And Winton calls me up at like the end of this year and says, hey, I need time, and this one's going to take a little longer. I go, fine. I said, how long do you need? He says it could take up to 4 months or 5 months. I said, this crap you type out for these conservatives takes 30 days. I said, who takes 4 months? He says, I got a guy that's got the biggest advance in the history of Regnery. And I go, Regnery, advance? They don't get advances. I mean, it's not their business model. What is this? He goes, it's Trump. I go, are you kidding me? He says, yes, to write a policy book. I go, you're kidding me. And that book, I think the subtitle is Make America Great Again. That book, if you read it and look at the 2016, this book came out, I believe, in 2011. And it's an amazing book. Winton Hall is a fantastic writer. He said Trump was so engaged in this book. This book has many of the foundational issues that Trump ran on later. So it's quite amazing. But Trump, there was some element of him that always looked at Obama and thought he could take Obama on. But I think he was smart enough to realize he would have gotten crushed going after Obama. So he was smart enough to kind of wave off on it. But the seeds of his interest was enough to start taking meetings, and Dave gave him a very detailed presentation on don't worry about the general election. You worry about the election that's in front of you. Worry about winning the Republican nomination. Dave had a quite detailed map of that, so you could tell it was serious. And then later on is what happened is Bossie starts putting on these cattle calls very early on in the system. So Trump showed up at CPAC. He gave a great speech, and then the first one I remember, I think was in late 2013 or early 2014. It was in New Hampshire, and I go up and they had a cattle call. It was Rand Paul. It was Newt Gingrich. It was Ted Cruz. You had all the kind of conservatives around with the media all over Cruz and all over Rand Paul. They were the hot thing. I think Walker was there too. I think, and Trump spoke. And what I would do when these guys would speak, I would sit off to the side and just watch the audience. And Trump gave a totally non-traditional Republican speech. He talked about trade. He talked about immigration. He talked about and not in political speak. Every other guy came up there. I don't care if it's Rand Paul or Mike Lee or Newt Gingrich or Ted Cruz. All of them. They all speak in a political vernacular. Now, these are grassroots leaders, Tea Party and the people you have to convince in New Hampshire to work for you. Trump comes up, totally off script, just stream of consciousness. I think he had a speech, never even looked at it. Stream of consciousness. These people are leaning forward. People are clapping. He's getting standing ovations. And I'm sitting there going, this is amazing. So we were doing our radio show, and Trump was going to come and do an interview with us. We got Sam Number to give us an interview. So I'm sitting there going, look, this guy's on fire, right? And you could tell in the room, he was kind of owning the room. And Jeremy Peters is my buddy from the New York Times. We interviewed Jeremy. Jeremy's beat, he had covered Andrew for years. Jeremy's beat at the Times is to cover the crazy grassroots of the Republican Party, right? So we interviewed him. And I'm sitting there with Jeremy, and I go, hey, Jeremy, I got Trump coming up next. If you're good, I'll get you 5 minutes for Trump so you can interview him. Jeremy looks at me and goes, Steve, if my editor found out that I even talked to Donald Trump, I'd be fired. And I go, why? He says, it's not a candidate. This is just show.
Publicity stunt.
This is a publicity stunt. This is a marketing stunt.
Right.
And so, and by the way, CNBC, MSNBC, they're all up there. The only interview he had all day was Breitbart Radio and then Breitbart News. Nobody would even consider him, and he owned the room. And then I started noticing, as he would go to these things, he was owning these rooms. I mean, you could tell in these grassroots things that Bossie kept putting on.
My sense was, and you go back and look at it, you guys hadn't really decided yet. There was Cruz, there was this, there was that, it's going to be somebody else. And Trump was never getting the oxygen that I would.
We would give him fair coverage, right? But we had, remember, because look, it's like this whole thing with the alt-right, right? To build a massive news site, it's like sedimentary rock. You need different layers of it. So we would have the Christian conservatives. We would have the libertarians, the Rand Paul guys. We would have the limited government conservatives, the Ted Cruz guys. We would have the gay Republican Lincoln club guys. The alt-right started as before it got taken over by these kind of white nationalists. When we originally got involved with it, these were the guys that said, hey, all this conservatism is all, there's no fight in it. We want an alternative that actually fights, right? It was kind of these memes. So my point is there's probably 20 groups. Of that, we tried to cover everybody, so it was going to come out. Honestly, if you go back and look at the coverage, probably Ted Cruz is the guy that, in fact, Ted Cruz deems to give Breitbart, when he goes to Liberty and announces his candidacy at Liberty University in that massive rally with 15,000 students, only Breitbart's backstage. He invites us to the family quarters. We do his wife, interview his wife. We then have all this private time with Ted Cruz, because we're like the Cruz site, because part of the sedimentary rock is limited government, heritage organization, conservatism, right? This whole populist nationalist part of it is a significant part, but it's not the overwhelming thing. We're getting more and more populist every day. Trump comes up, and really the key moment is coming down the escalator. When Trump, at the top of the escalator, if you go back and look at the polling, I think Trump was in 7th place, right? At the bottom of the escalator, in the speech, and particularly when the media bites, and I'm sitting there watching, we have 5 people up at Trump Tower. We have Boyle leading an entire team. We got wall-to-wall coverage. And in the speech, when he starts going on to not just the immigration part and trade, which nobody's ever talked about, but when he starts doing the over-the-top stuff, and I said, you watch, they're going to bite hard, and they're going to bite hard and blow this up. I'm sitting there watching this thing on TV. When he starts talking about the Mexican rapists and everything like that, I go, oh my God. I said, he's just buried everything. They're going to go, CNN is literally going to broadcast 24 hours a day. He goes to Iowa, I think that night, it's all they talk about. He goes from number 7, he's at 1 and never looks back. The next day polling, Trump's gone to 1. In fact, I think it's the next day, the day after, Don Lemon has him on for the most classic Trump interview in human history. Lemon's sitting there hammering it. You got to show us some facts. You got to show us some facts. And Trump gets a TV. It's a phone interview. Trump goes, Don, somebody's doing the raping, right? It's just so. But it was the mainstream media that catapulted Trump from, because remember, when people at the top of the escalator, nobody still thought, even though he had filed his financial report, right? Which in hindsight, is the financial report, but nobody thought this. They thought it was a marketing ploy to get a better deal at The Apprentice, etc. The mainstream media catapulted him to the number 1, and then it was within 30 days we had the Fox News. The first on August 1st, I think it was the debate when Fox News, when Murdoch and Ailes, or particularly Murdoch and Ailes, being the part of the Bush apparatus, decided they were going to kneecap Donald Trump right out of the box. And that's what Megyn Kelly, they went through his Twitter feed, they went through all the Apprentice tapes, they went through everything and came out and did a hit like the left would do on somebody. And that's when all war broke out. That's when Breitbart, that's when you had to choose sides.
Who's in the war?
Well, the war was Fox and all the conservative media, National Review, Weekly Standard, the Republican, basically, it's a racket. It's a racket because the people are over here, the voters are focused on illegal immigration, trade deals, jobs, why income inequality, where's my pay raise, basic nuts and bolts stuff that people, the sovereignty of the country. The National Review, Weekly Standard, neoliberal neocons are kind of a donor, beck and call the donors. It's a total disconnect on foreign policy. And remember, one of the powers of Trump and the basic thing is that America's in decline and the elites are okay with that. This is about managed decline. So whether it's healthcare, the southern border, NATO, China, Iran, pick it, right? The education system, we're in managed decline, and the elites are fine with that. And what's looked at as the Republican elites are okay because they're kind of the junior partner in the punching bag of Obama and these progressive Democrats, and they don't do it. They kind of agree with them at the end of the day. Remember, after 2014, the reason Obama becomes kind of a hero to the Breitbart staff, we call him, honorary honey badger, and because we're humping this thing in 14, Ebola, the border, and all of a sudden he gets smoked in the midterm elections. Okay, what does he do? He calls a press conference for the next day. Press conference, everybody shows up.
This is the shellacking?
He gets shellacked.
Right.
He loses the Senate. He shows back up. He gets smoked. He calls a press conference, and all CNN and everybody, New York Times, is he going to listen to what the people are saying? The country going a different direction. Obama going to listen. He gets up there and goes, okay, guys, here's how it is. I'm president of the United States, and you're not. He goes, here's 10 executive orders I'm going to sign immediately. And by the way, you know that DACA thing? I got a DAPA. I'm adding the parents onto it. How do you like that? I'm sitting there going, this guy's my role model. I said, he just got smoked, and he comes out and hits you right in the mouth. This is a leader. Remember, Boehner collapses. We get to omnibus. Everything we fought for, we just won. And Boehner does this omnibus bill, gives him Planned Parenthood, gives him DACA, everything he's wanted and more. That's when we realize the Republican apparatus is the Washington Generals to their Harlem Globetrotters, right? You're just set to lose. And so, but that is this thing that builds up. And so when you get to the Fox situation, Fox has chosen a side. It's so evident in that debate that they're there to kneecap Donald Trump, okay? They're there to take him out. And that's when we go, okay, so we run
20 stories on Megyn Kelly. I get Tony Lee and Matt Boyle, my two hammers. They go right after Megyn Kelly. We're going to Linsky her, right? We're going to cut her out call her out from the herd and just hit her nonstop. And after about 48 hours, I get a call from Ailes, who was kind of a mentor. But remember, in building Breitbart, I never allowed anybody at Breitbart to go on Fox, ever. I went on a couple times about films because National Review, Rich Lowry, Tucker Carlson Time, Daily Caller, none of those guys existed unless they were on Fox. All they're on Fox, their guys are on Fox, they're a subsidiary of Fox. When Ailes calls them up, they got to line up in a certain way, and this was the payoff. He calls them up, they all got to line up and back to the Megyn Kelly. We're independent. We don't need Ailes financially. They're not going to do anything for me, right? So we've never had anybody. I was never on Fox. None of our reporters are on Fox. If you want to come here and get some story and get a Drudge Link and go on Fox, you're in the wrong line of work because it's not going to happen. We're Breitbart, and we got our own point of view. We're going to do it our own way. And this is where it came down to. All of the rest of them line up with anti-Trump. And Ailes calls me up and says, "You got to knock off these stories." She's crying. She's all upset. She's getting death threats. I go, "It sounds like a personal problem." I said, "We're not backing off. We're gonna put more stories up tomorrow." And he goes, "You got to come. What do you guys?" He says, "No, you're not going to pull what the left pulls. This is the typical drive-by. You're going to go into a guy's Twitter feed. You're going to go into 14 years of a show, and this is what you're going to come up with is Rosie O'Donnell. It doesn't roll like that. Okay? We're all in now. Okay? And if you don't like it, that's your problem. Because I don't owe you anything. You have no bearing whatsoever on how we do."
What were the stakes for you, Steve, at that moment?
Well, the stakes was the countries. To me, it's about the country. You finally have somebody in Trump that is now giving voice to kind of this voiceless working class and lower middle class that's had no representation. They've been voting for Republicans that work exactly against their economic interest. Look at these trade deals. You have all this theory of free markets. These free markets against the mercantilist power is destroying the manufacturing base of the country, right? You have these guys that are Chamber of Commerce that, look, the state of Texas is controlled by Republicans. You have Republicans, why can't you shut down the border? The reason is they want the labor. The Republican Party donors want the cheap labor. That's the point. So you finally have a guy that's speaking in a non-political vernacular, and you can tell he's connecting with people already in the rallies. I said, this is our guy. He's a very imperfect instrument, but he's an armor-piercing shell, okay? And here's the other thing. They're scared to death, right? They don't know how to handle this guy. And remember, he's against this Republican primary. There's 16. This is the flower of a generation of $1 billion put in by the Kochs, put in by the Singers, put in by the donors, the Heritage, AEI, every vertical. You got Bush, you got, for the Libertarians, you got Rand Paul, for the neocons, you got Marco Rubio, for the big government conservatives, you got Chris Christie, you've got Ben Carson. You look across the board, these 16 in every vertical, it's the best we've ever had. It's a hell of a field. And you got Trump. And Trump is going to tell the guys, he's going to go through this thing like a sift through grass, right? Because he's talking about what the voters care about. These other guys are kind of, mumbo jumbo and all this stuff that you can't win national elections anymore. The kind of the Heritage Organization talking points, the Paul Ryan, limited government. It's fine in concept. You can't win places like Wisconsin and Michigan and the big heartland, the states in this country to win national elections. You showed that with Romney. Romney and Paul Ryan. Paul Ryan got smoked by 9 points in Wisconsin. Okay, here's a guy that can actually get Reagan Democrats, could actually get low propensity voters. You could see it line up at that time. So we went to Fox and ourselves went to war. And I have tremendous respect for Roger Ailes. He just sees the world differently. They think Trump's a disaster and is going to blow up the whole thing. And they remember, Roger worked for the Bushes. This is a totally Bush mindset. Okay, the Bush neoliberal global economics, neocon foreign policy, which is the elites that are leading us in decline. Trump is a total rejection of that. And they're not into the rejection business. They're not into disruption. And Trump is a huge disruptor. He sends his lawyer down here the next day, who I know pretty well, his personal lawyer, to come down and kind of like in The Godfather, give me some bad news. You guys have got to stop. This is going to start getting ugly. And I said, we're not stopping. I said, we're all in. We're a populist nationalist site. Okay, and this guy is the populist nationalist candidate. We're going to do the news. We'll do it straight, but we're not, and we're going after Megyn Kelly. Okay, because she's bad news. I told Ailes in the second phone call, I said, look, you've created a monster. Don't think that monster's not going to turn on you one day. I said, she's out of control, right? And we're going to take her on. And so we kept pounding every day of anti-Megyn Kelly articles. And of course, if you look at the comments section, these things are getting 10 and 15,000, 20,000 comments. The whole Trump, all the Pepes, all these Trump guys were pounding in here. And it caused a problem, but it started to stay with Fox. I think started to get the joke that this guy's eventually going to be, going to be a real guy. And so throughout the fall and winter, it was this intense kind of battle, but we had his back the entire way.
So let's talk about the Access Hollywood moment back in that conference room, sitting there. Tell me what you said to Trump. Tell me what you thought when you heard it. Take me, in there.
So we finally had Trump very engaged. And let's say this: when I got there in August, debate prep was not exactly top of his list. Trump as a student would be your roommate. He's what I call a game day player. He's not a guy that's going to every lecture, getting the books, the textbooks, and reading the notes, okay? He comes in the night before with a pot of coffee, learns what he's got to learn, goes in and gets whatever grade he gets, right?
I know that guy.
So Trump is very engaged because this is the second debate, and it's the one that's going to be in the round. This is when he's not going to be anchored to a podium. He can get out and kind of, you can see the chemistry and stuff like that. So this is the one, and we're actually doing real prep. And that day we're up in the 26th floor conference room, and it's Friday afternoon about 2 o'clock, and I'm sitting there going, we're closing, we're still losing, but we've closed, we're like 12 points down or 10 or 16, whatever thing you take in mid-August, we're way down. We've been closing it ever since, and so we're competitive. And all of a sudden Hope Hicks shows up outside the glass thing, and she's giving me the signal. And so I step out, I go out and I read this thing. She got this transcript. And she's like about to cry. She goes, oh, this is terrible. I go, what is this? She goes, oh, they got some videotapes or audio. But I look at it, I read it. The first time I read it, dude, it doesn't look that bad to me. And I said, what are you so upset about? What is this? I said, the Washington Post is going to publish a story in an hour. And I go, what's so bad about it? And she goes, well, look at it. She says, I'm going to grab him by the pussy. And I go, oh, maybe I haven't focused on this. So I look down and go, oh, okay. So I called Don McGahn, who's our legal guy. And so Don McGahn's going to call the Washington Post legal department. I'm going to call like the editor. And I call the reporter. I don't want to talk to you. I just, give me your boss. I'm the big shot. Give me your boss. And I go and I said, look, here's the thing. You got this thing right here. Give it to us. We'll authenticate it. We'll do our thing and authenticate it, and we'll make sure we'll come back to you. And it may take a couple of days, but by Tuesday, we'll be back to you and we'll authenticate if this is really Trump and hasn't been modified.
You want to get beyond the debate.
Thank you. And I said, we'll authenticate it. I'm like this big shot. We'll authenticate it. We'll do all this. He goes, hey, look, dude. He says, it's 3:50. This thing's going up in 9 minutes. It'll authenticate itself. Boom, that thing hits, and we're sitting in the conference room. And on video, I didn't quite realize it was audio and video. In video, it's pretty powerful, so everything shuts down.
Pretty powerful.
Locker room talk. Yeah. And so the rest of the day, we got to figure out. Now, I got a little something. Understanding this is the time that he's going to have Hillary Clinton on a stage with him and Bill Clinton in the audience. What I had done is that months before, with a guy named Aaron Klein at Breitbart, it was about filming and getting the actual women that Bill Clinton had sexually assaulted. And even in that, we had a special guest, the young woman who Hillary Clinton had, the rape victim that Hillary Clinton defended, the rapist. We had them all, and we were supposed to get them up on Fox during that week.
Fox?
On Sean Hannity, like I'd done this movie, A Hope in the Change, about Democrats who voted for Obama and not. We'd do an audience show, and he's going to have all the people up there. We're going to show all the videos, have them cry on stage, boom. And for some reason, and I'm not saying it's Fox senior management, that thought maybe Hillary's going to win, and so they didn't want to get this kind of down in the mud. On Wednesday, we were told, early in the week, we were told it's not going to happen. And so Aaron kept filming them at the Watergate Hotel in Washington, D.C. And so as soon as I saw that, this is now, I think, 3 or 4 o'clock on Friday afternoon, I called Aaron and I said, check and see if they're available to come to St. Louis, right? And he checks that they'd love to come to St. Louis. I go, fine. Aaron was going to put these things up on the Breitbart site, the filmed interviews of people, because Fox wouldn't do it, and George was going to link to it. It was going to be up Sunday morning, and somehow would get him there. So I got a little thing in my back pocket I'm not telling anybody about. We go in there, and it's kind of a disaster. We're trying to figure out what's going on. It's just, we're being inundated now by the Republican Party. So the first thing we do is, okay, Trump's going to answer this, and we're going to do a video, right? To have him answer, at least buy us some time. Right. That's the thing they call the hostage video, right? We finally get it done, I think, at midnight. It is a fiasco. We have tough time technically. He has to read it off a screen. He's editing the thing. And I actually, when we look back on it, I actually think it's a work of art. Let's say this, the general journalistic community did not agree with me at the time. They're going like, who put Trump in this little box, right, with a fake New York City background in a hostage video? But I think it does. So that gets us through Friday. Next day, we're going to have a high command meeting.
Wait a minute, on Friday, Ryan and all, is that when Ryan runs and lots of other guys run?
They're starting to run, but they don't run to Saturday morning. You're getting, but listen, I can tell the dam's about to break, right? We're getting inundated, nonstop calls, and poor Reince is sitting there. In fact, Reince says, hey, I'm not going to stay for the stream of the video. Let me get back to D.C. and calm things down. And I go, fine. And I said, but, we got to be back up here tomorrow because tomorrow's going to be dim bin food, right? We're going to be under siege. So we set a meeting for 11 o'clock in the morning. And by that morning, it's starting to, we're getting Condi Rice, everybody's, they're punching out the ticket, they're off this thing, out. And Reince is, I call him, he's on the train, fine. We get there, it's about 10 minutes to 11, I think it is. No Reince. We're going to have the meeting up in Trump Tower, okay? And this is how serious it is. Jared and Ivanka, who are very observant, observant Jewish people who really take the Sabbath very seriously, and all the campaign have never taken off. They actually, that night, are around for the shooting of the video, and according with their religious beliefs, but they actually do everything and come back up the next day. Everybody, so the whole high command is going to be there, and there's no rights. And I get rights in front. I go, where are you? You got where you're going to be? He says, well, I'm at Penn Station, but I'm going to get back on the train. I go, what do you mean you're going to get back on the train? He says, look, I've talked to donors. It's over. I can't. If I go there, I'm going to get fired as RNC chair. And I go, dude, you're showing up. And he goes, I can't do it, man. It's over. This thing's over. And I go, what do you mean it's over? It's not over. We're going to power through. He says, you're not going to power through. This thing's over. We get in this huge argument, and I'm pretty close to Reince. Reince is a solid guy. I said, you got to show up here. If you don't show up here, you're going to get torched worse than you ever think you get torched by the donors. And you're going to have to do the perp walk. You're going to come through Trump and that thing with all the TV cameras. You're going to have to get in the elevator bank, and you're going to have to come up and join us. And he does. And so we get up there, and then it's Rudy and Christie and all the traditional politicians are saying it's over, and you gotta, Trump's going around and saying, give me your percentage. What do I do? And they're all like, 0%, 20%. And they want to have him go on 60 Minutes. They want to have him. Kellyanne comes with an idea that David Muir would come in, would do a live ABC News thing, and with Melania and Ivanka, and they're not interested. So the whole thing's kind of a fiasco. So he finally comes around to me. He says, what's your percentage? And I've told him from the day I've taken this job on and thing, you have a 100% metaphysical certitude that you will win if you just stick to this populist nationalist message and hang her as the representatives of the elite. We hang that around her, that she represents the elite, you represent the people, you're a populist, and we hammer it. You're going to win. I don't care if you're 16 down. It doesn't matter. The key number is 70% of the people think America's in decline. You're going to return America to her former glory. He comes to me, he says, what do you think? I said, 100%. He goes, 100% what? I said, 100%, you got this. It's a metaphysical certitude lock. He goes, knock off with the 100%. He goes, I got to hear your real number. I go, it's 100%. And he goes, I said, listen, they don't care. This is locker room talk. They don't care about vulgarity and anything like that. They care about they're losing their jobs. They're losing their country. They see their country going away from them. They don't have anything to pass down to the kids. That's what they care about. Jared and I we're basically rented the Hilton Ballroom 2 blocks over, and at 6 o'clock we're going to go out at noon. We're going to go out here in a half hour and put up on your Twitter and on Facebook. We're holding a rally for everybody who shows up in a red hat, and we'll pack it with a bunch of hammerheads. And you're going to throw down and just go after the Washington Post and the media. And that's how we're going to power through this. No excuses. No, just let's power through and see Hillary and things. Let's say this, that didn't exactly get voted. There was not a unanimous consent we should do that plan. And we decided to compromise. The compromise is David Muir and ABC. So David Muir is like out in the Hamptons. They're going to helicopter, and ABC gets the whole crew over. 6 o'clock, we take a break and go down to the infamous 25th floor conference room where we've had all the big events in my life with Trump. We're there. Trump is going to take an hour, get sorted, come down, and Christie and Rudy are going to write his preamble that he's going to be able to say on ABC. This is 6 o'clock on Saturday night, live to the nation. It'll be the biggest show in history since MASH, right? Donald Trump addressing the Billy Bush tape. And I'm sitting at the end of the thing with Stephen Miller and watching this. I'm thinking, they're going, it's over. If we do this, it's over. There's just nobody, you can't pull this off. So I'm sitting there thinking, what are we going to do here? And he gets there, and Christie and these guys, it's not even typed. I think it's handwritten by Christie, puts it over, and Trump comes out, and Trump's in a bad mood. The time we left him alone up in the tower had not been quality time, okay?
In what way?
I just don't know, but he's not in a good mood. He's in a bad mood, okay? There were a lot of people in a bad mood up there, okay? The tape was pretty raw, right? And now we've got, by the way, a full revolt. Pence is nowhere to be found. He's not out there saying great. He gives we get a letter from him. Paul Ryan's out of the campaign. McConnell's out. I mean, now it's a thing that, and Reince lays up a proposal. He's asked Reince, what do you think? He says, well, you got 2 choices. You're either going to lose by the biggest landslide in history, or you step down today, and we've got a way that we can restructure the ticket. That we only Colorado's out of play because they got to mail in the ballots. Everything else we can get changed, and we can do this. I go, are you nuts? I'm not going to do that. So that's what I told Reince later. I said, why'd you even bring that up? It's not going to happen. Okay, it's not going to happen. We will fight this through some other way, but that is not going to happen. He's not going to quit. Just even to bring that up is absurd. That was the donors. Because they thought they were going to lose the Republican Party. They thought every woman in America will never vote for a Republican again, right? Because this guy's a barbarian. We're in the conference room. Christie gives him this thing with Rudy, and he starts reading Donald Trump. He gets like 2 sentences in, and he goes, this is crap. This is baby talk. He goes, am I a baby? I'm not going to do this. He turns around to him, he goes, it's got to be better, I'm out. And they go, well, who makes this change today? And he turns around to him, he goes, this is ridiculous. I'm not doing it. And Kellyanne goes, well, we got to do it. They're flying. ABC's loading up. This thing's set up. David Muir's helicoptering in. This thing's a go. And Trump just goes, I'm not doing it. And you hear you're all the way up on the 25th floor in Trump Tower. You can hear on the streets, Trump goes, what's that? And you look down. There's got to be 10,000 people on Fifth Avenue. They got the police on the horses. They got riot police. You look down, and there's literally this mob down there. And he goes, look, there's my people. My people, that's what I got to do. I said, we can't get the hill and we let it go. He says, I'm just going to go down and talk to my people. And I said, well, I don't think all of those are our people. Of the mob, it's probably 80% of want Trump's head on a pike. There's 20% of the deplorables. Most of them are sitting there, angry women that are sitting there want to tear Trump apart. I said, I don't know if that's exactly our crowd, but this is what a leader does. He just says, no, these are my people. I got to go talk to my people. The Secret Service says, this is not going to happen. You're not going to walk out there. We have no control. And he just goes, I'm going. He takes off. And Kellyanne goes, I go with him, and then Christy and I have a sidebar tete-a-tete off to the side. Trump goes down. That's that famous picture. Trump just walks out there. And if you listen to the crowd, 2/3 of the crowd is, we hate you, right? But he blocks it out. He's waving and everything like that and turns it into, I think, a seminal moment. That was, in that moment, he won the presidency. And I realized all my study of military history and everything like this, campaigns come down to one or two decisions made with imperfect information in the heat of battle, in the fog of war. One way leads you to victory and the other way leads you to defeat. There was 90% chance we would have gone the other way that day, from the night before, from the pressure that was on him and everything like that. And that's what a leader does. He's able to reach in and understand something. I think people misjudge this on Trump. He's got a natural leadership ability to basically focus and make the right decision. That was the inflection point. The women, we got there the next day and everything like that, but it was in that moment when he stood up and said, I'm not doing this. And went, oh, you can't, ABC's here, everything like that. He looks down at the crowd, which was a hostile crowd, but in his mind, turned it into, those are my people. I've got to go down and address them. When he went down and did that thing, the whole thing kind of reverted. And from there on in, we had to still punch it out, but it was, if it would change in that moment, if he had gone on ABC, Hillary Clinton would be president of the United States.
When we've seen the video of you lining up Paula Jones and everybody else, and you have this kind of, I don't know, it's a mirthful look on your face as you're going in behind the cameras as that is unfolding. What are you thinking at that?
So I wanted to spring the trap on these guys because I thought in the Twitter feeds and everything like that, they were so one-sided. So what we did, we didn't tell anybody. It was just Jared. I got permission from Jared the next day. I sat with Jared and said, he and I were kind of partners in the campaign. I said, look, here's how we're going to bring them. And here's what we'll do. We're going to get them in a room, line them up with mics, have Trump come down and talk to them, hug them and everything like that. And then we're going to let the media know that we're ending our debate prep, which technically we are, and just let them in and spring the trap and hit them with a full volley of Paula Jones. He raped me, right? And just hit them, right? Clinton's actions versus Trump's words. And then have them at the debate where Clinton's got to walk by him. They're going to be in the family section, in the VIP seats right there, and Bill Clinton's got to walk by him because these ladies are so mad, they're going to grab a piece of Bill Clinton on national TV and read the Riot Act. And so Trump didn't know about it. Reince didn't know about it. We got Hope Hicks in on the thing at the last second to get him in and everything like that. So we walk up there. We're in the presidential suite at the hotel. We're doing some debate prep and everything like that. Trump's off to the side. I told Jared, we got to go tell him. Walk up, and Trump, as often would do, we kind of lean back and almost close his eyes and say, okay, here's what we got. We got Paula Jones and all the women that Clinton assaulted, plus we got the rape victim, right? And they're all fired up. You're going to go down. The media is going to do debate prep. You're going to spend 10 or 15 minutes with them, hear their stories, commensurate with them, talk to them. Then you're going to sit in the middle. We're going to open the door, and they're going to come in, and we're going to fucking hit them, okay? And I'm sitting there, I'm making my pitch, right? He goes, I go, what do you think? He goes, I love it. So just Jared and I, we grab Trump. And don't tell Reince or anybody. We just slip out of the room. We got a service elevator. We go right down. And the thing is, and as soon as that's where I went over, I had to see when we sprung the door, and and of course, the guys that came in are the ones I detest the most. They're all, and the door's open. They go, is it appropriate to grab women without their permission? And they all yelling, and they get in there, and it's like, what is this? And they hit a volley. And my girl Paula Jones, the first one, Bill Clinton raped me, right? And just boom, and they hit it. It was perfect. And it was that got us momentum. Now, what happened backstage was, remember, at the other debate, they had put Mark Cuban right down in Trump's eyesight. And I said, no. The deal is Cuban's going to be back in the dark. It's all these his seats. I said, and the guys at the commission go, well, we can't control it. We don't have security control. I go, what do you mean? I'll get the Secret Service and take him out. He can't be sitting right in Trump's line. That's not the way it's going to work. These guys go, oh, no. We don't have security, and he's got to stay. So here, I go up and tell him, I said, hey, here's actually the seating for the VIPs. And it's all him. He goes, oh, no, that's family only. I says, family only? That's interesting, because Claire McCaskill is sitting with the Clintons. So it's just VIPs. These are our VIPs. Melania and Ivanka are going to sit in the first row in back of them, right? And these guys go, and I said, yeah. And Clinton, the way we agreed on the stage thing, we walk out here, you walk out there, and Bill Clinton's going to walk right by him. And these guys go, oh, no. They come back and said, if you see them, we're going to have security remove them. I said, hang on. We just had a debate 2 weeks ago. You couldn't move Cuban because you don't have security. They go, oh, yeah. And so we had this massive fight. And so we're down now to 90 seconds before showtime. I go up to Mr. Trump and I say, okay, look, here's the drill. If we force this, we can do it. But it's going to cause a consternation. It may embarrass Ivanka and Melania. Your call. We can send him. I think we've done enough. They'll still be right there giving him stink eye. And he's rattled. You can tell Bill Clinton and the whole Clinton thing is rattled. He goes, let's do it that way. And I go, fine. So at the last second, we seat the family. And he said, Bill Clinton, that's why they had that great shot on Drudge where he's like looking, he thinks we're going to like springboard these, because these women are worked up right now. They want a piece of Bill Clinton, big time. And that energy and having, and you could tell Clinton, she was off her game that night. We had rattled him. And so I think that gave us the velocity. That gave us the muzzle velocity to kind of drive home the last, 4 or 5 weeks of the campaign.
So he wins. Well, that ground has been covered.
Well, one part maybe has with this, when we say wins, I'm the 100% metaphysical certitude, and we get the exit polls at 5 o'clock.
Right.
So the exit polls at 5 o'clock we're tied in Iowa and Ohio. That I had us up like 3 to 5 points. Tied. We're losing everywhere else, including blown out in Pennsylvania, blown out in Florida. This is like I forget the total number. I think it was like a 350 electoral vote, 400 electoral vote. This is a landslide. We are blown out. I mean, it is a catastrophe. And I'm sitting there, we step on the balcony, it's so bad that nobody should see these. Right. And we look at them and I go, we can't be that far off. We got this thing. We're over top of Wisconsin. I mean, we're competitive in Pennsylvania. It can't be this bad. And he goes, George is hanging with, calls Drudge. And Drudge goes, fuck these things. This is all corporate media. This is all fucked up. They're lying. So I feel better. And we called Trump, and Trump goes, hey, we left it all in the field. Nothing else we could have done. And we decided that since we get the kids and we get Don Jr. and some others get on talk radio, the Mark Levin show, and hey, we got to, and it was a big lesson. We heard almost instantaneously, people came to us and said the newsrooms, were high-fiving and people were laughing. This is Trump, not just a defeat. This is going to be to crush this thing, right? All this disruption and all Trump stuff and all these kind of guys in red hats, it's over. And it was a huge lesson for me because it started to play out exactly like, the only thing that concerned me is the Detroit Free Press called, I think it was 8 or 9 o'clock, right out of the box. They called Michigan for Hillary Clinton. And they are, in 150 years, I don't think they've ever been wrong. There's not like some broadcast TV thing that's got guys. They're on it. And I go, man. I said, that's that, because I think we're going to win Michigan. Michigan, I got, we got this. And I think it was around midnight. It was right after Ohio and a couple others came in. We had like 5 states that hadn't been called. At midnight, for the first time in their history, the Detroit Free Press reversed it and said, too close to call. And that's when I said, Trump's president of the United States.
Did he think he was going to lose? I mean,
no, he's so competitive, not going to lose. He was so competitive. But of course, the drumbeat. You got to remember, every day on Morning Joe, every day in the New York Times, we're the island of misfit toys. Because I've never been in a campaign headquarters in my life. Kellyanne had never run a campaign. She's a pollster, right? We're just this group of, it's a grab bag of people. Now, we could see, particularly in these kind of working class districts, that's where we kept going back to Wisconsin. That's where we kept going to Michigan. Remember, in Wisconsin, Paul Ryan wouldn't campaign with us on that Sunday because he says, we're going to lose. I can't take 2 national defeats. And we don't go to Wisconsin because Ryan won't be on the stage. But the key thing is that the algorithm, first off, 2 things. Number one, there's a lot of people that vote for Trump that will never admit to voting for Trump. That's one of the reasons the exit polls were wrong, is that they won't admit it even if they voted for it. The other was the algorithm, the Detroit Free Press, was that from the urban areas, that they extrapolated out the algorithms of the rural areas, and that's where Trump overperformed in kind of small town America, right? He overperformed where we had kind of focused. And so those 2 things had the exit polls wrong, and that led to this massively surprise where the whole media was so joyous at the beginning of the night, and then it's starting at like 9 or 10 o'clock, you could tell that this thing was going in our direction.
Let's go to the inauguration, what a lot of people call the American Carnage speech. You write that speech?
No, the president wrote it, but Miller and I had. The inauguration speech was there were 2 speeches that week that people don't focus on the other. There was President Xi goes to Davos on Tuesday, I think, and gives a speech on globalization. In Trump's speech on Friday, it's called the American Carnage speech. Maybe we should have realized in writing it, that would be the takeaway line. But the takeaway line, and I don't want to sound this too highfalutin, but it was structured a little bit on Lincoln's second inaugural. Lincoln goes back through all the causes of the war, right? He talks about his previous thing and what had happened in the country. And then he ends with this very powerful phrase, and then war came. And he stops, pauses, and he does the rest of the speech. Our whole thing was to build up with the president about how the elites had not taken action, that the country had gotten this thing. And the punchline was, now comes the hour of action. Boom, you lead down to that, hit with the hour of action, and then Trump talks to what he's going to do. Obviously, we had the American Carnage line in there. But it was really, if you look at the 2 speeches in hindsight, it's really 2, it's one is pitching kind of this globalist system where You have a center of power that happens to be in China and administrative units throughout the world. And Xi's speech is very particular that the problem in the world today is caused by populism, it's caused by nationalism, it's caused by this. Trump's is a defense of essentially the Westphalian system. It is a defense of the nation state as the unit of government, as the unit of how we're going to govern ourselves with the citizen, a free citizen, as the basic unit of that. And so that speech, which Trump works on intensely in Mar-a-Lago, and this one, because Trump would not practice the rally speeches, we'd have it up there and he would go off script. Here he practiced over and over again, including the night after all the balls and everything. Stephen and I were cleaning it up. We had the exact same, because we've been on the stage to make sure everything was perfect. We went back to Blair House and we actually had the exact podium in Blair House in one of the old libraries there. The president came back at like midnight and practiced a couple more times. So he was very bought into this thing and kind of owned that speech, which I think is still one of the most powerful speeches. He conceived this thing. I remember in Mar-a-Lago, he's working on the lines, we will form new alliances and create new ones. Or excuse me, we will form new alliances and rejuvenate old ones. And we will unite the civilized world to eradicate radical Islamic terrorism from the face of the earth. And at the time, I kind of said, hey, that's a big check you're going to have to cash. But this was his focus on the destruction of the physical caliphate of ISIS to start off with, and he wanted that in there. And that, I said, that line is going to be read back to you many, many times as you go forward. But he was adamant that certain elements of this thing had to be in there, and he got them in there. So it's just, this was very much his speech. We went over this thing, and he would edit as we went, change it, recraft it, etc.
So it's the amazing thing a lot of people talked about. We talked about it in the beginning of one film at least, which was there you all are there's Washington. There's the administrative state in a lot of ways standing behind him, and he's delivering a speech that castigates in some ways, in lots of ways, the elite Washington establishment, and they're right behind him. I fully expected him at some moment to turn and point back at them.
I told Stephen, I said, the only problem we've got here, structurally, as you look at it, this whole thing's being built, is that we should turn the podium around, and he should address the swamp. That would be the powerful speech. That it was literally addressed, and I knew we hit the mark, because you could tell that Bush was very uncomfortable with this. The Victory Night speech was very watered down, because the Victory Night speech, he called the country to come together, right? The first cut that Stephen and I had on the victory, because Trump is very superstitious. There was no victory speech and there was no concession speech written on that night. We literally wrote that after the Detroit Free Press flipped it back to too close to call, because that's when we knew we had this thing. So Steve and I started working on it like at 1 o'clock in the morning, typing this thing up. It was go to Washington and we're going to burn out the permanent political class. We're going to take a torch to the enemy, okay? That it was fire breathing. That all got watered down into kind of let's have a group hug. It's the reason, interestingly enough, you never see the Trump Victory Night speech ever replayed, because it's just not Trump. It's kind of like, let's have a group hug.
But what it did was start everybody saying the pivot is coming. Like every president pivots. He gets in the Oval Office, he sits down, and the weight of it all, the responsibility to heal the inclusion moment or the division moment or the fight back moment. And everybody said he's going to pivot. He has to pivot.
Wait, you see, because the media doesn't remember. The mainstream media is not in on the joke. Here's the joke. The American elite have allowed the nation to decline. They are in diminished decline. And this is not about political party. This is the permanent political class. Okay, it's sponsorship on Wall Street and in corporate America. They have this political apparatchiks down in Washington, but they are in managed decline to unacceptable outcomes to average citizens. Managed decline for unacceptable outcomes to average citizens, because they don't have to bear the brunt of it.
Right.
They don't bear the brunt of the healthcare system in collapse. They don't bear the brunt of the education system in collapse. They're taken care of. To wit, they bring about the largest financial collapse in the country, and they're better off in 10 years. Why wouldn't you like the system? The system's working great for them. Mm-hmm. It's not managed decline for them. They're making more money on the way down than they made on the way up. And so that's what Trump is a rallying cry for that. Remember, the lead up to the inauguration is we're going to hit the deck plates running with these executive orders. We've got this whole system that Miller has gone through.
Tell me about that.
Well, an outside organization had done this theoretical analysis to show that every executive order that was still around from Obama and from Bush. And we had this whole thing. We had a whole tiger team of the White House counsel guys, the deconstruction of the administrative state, which is a huge element. Remember, you got two forms of populism. You have right-wing populism, you have left-wing populism. Right-wing populism is about deconstruction of the administrative state. Bernie Sanders and AOC is about more inclusion of the state. We're both populists, but they want more state intervention. We want less. In fact, we want to start to take apart certain parts of the apparatus. And so that whole thing is basically focused on the deconstruction of the administrative state, at the same time saying, hey, we're nationalists. This is about the nation. The nation's concerns have to come forward. We had in the first 100 days, every day we're going to be hitting with either 3 executive orders or whatever. Number one is that the Democratic Party's shattered. They don't know if they're coming or going, right? They got one group that's doing identity politics, another group that's the Clinton centrist. I said, we've broken them right now. They have no idea. They're going to have their own internal civil war, right? They'll keep them occupied for a while. So what we've got to do is just hit, and keep it. It's momentum. The opposition party is the media. And the media can only, because they're dumb and they're lazy, they can only focus on one thing at a time. And the one thing they'll mainly focus on is either they do the horse race, or once the horse race, who's in, who's out. Right. It's like the high school, who are the cool kids in the cafeteria, right? Because it's easy. It's the reason they do the horse race stuff all the time, right? And they won't do the basic, what are the core things that are going on in the country. I said, all we have to do is flood the zone. Every day we hit them with 3 things. They'll bite on one, and we'll get all of our stuff done. Bang, bang, bang. These guys will never be able to recover. But we got to start with muzzle velocity. So it's got to start. And it's got to hammer. It's got to muzzle velocity. You got it. When you get anything in life, remember the house is 5 to 7 against, right? To get something done, you've got to go through these certain stages of momentum and keep forcing it. And so otherwise, just pure inertia, right, or the loss of energy.
So did you know that with the travel ban and lots of other the things that came, just the chaos?
So that's really the point that I wanted to drive home is he did all of that, and that with that last little part that he just elucidated. Hold on, let's go back over it.
These executive orders, we've got this whole system that Miller has gone through.
Tell me about that.
Well, an outside organization had done this theoretical analysis to show that every executive order that was still around from Obama and from Bush. And we had this whole thing. We had a whole tiger team of the White House counsel guys, the deconstruction of the administrative state, which is a huge element. Remember, you got 2 forms of populism. You have right-wing populism, you have left-wing populism. Right-wing populism is about deconstruction of the administrative state. Bernie Sanders and AOC is about more inclusion of the state. We're both populists, but they want more state intervention. We want less. In fact, we want to start to take apart certain parts of the apparatus. And so that whole thing is basically focused on the deconstruction of the administrative state, at the same time saying, hey, we're nationalists. This is about the nation. The nation's concerns have to come forward. We had in the first 100 days, every day we're going to be hitting with either 3 executive orders, whatever. Number one is that the Democratic Party shattered. They don't know if they're coming or going, right? They got one group that's doing identity politics, another group that's the Clinton centrist. I said, we've broken them right now. They have no idea. They're going to have their own internal civil war, right? They'll keep them occupied for a while. So what we've got to do is just hit, and keep it. It's momentum. The opposition party is the media. And the media can only, because they're dumb and they're lazy, they can only focus on one thing at a time. And the one thing they'll mainly focus on is either they do the horse race, or once the horse race, who's in, who's out. It's like the high school, who are the cool kids in the cafeteria, right? Because it's easy. It's the reason they do the horse race stuff all the time, right? And they won't do the basic, what are the core things that are going on in the country. I said, all we have to do is flood the zone. Every day we hit them with 3 things. They'll bite on one, and we'll get all of our stuff done. Bang, bang, bang. These guys will never be able to recover. But we got to start with muzzle velocity. So it's got to start, and it's got to hammer. It's got to muzzle velocity. You got it. When you get anything in life, remember the house is 5 to 7 against, right? To get something done, you've got to go through these certain stages of momentum and keep forcing it. And so otherwise, just pure inertia, right, or the loss of energy.
So did you know that with the travel ban and lots of other the things that came?
So, like I said, this guy is the strategist. I know people are like, why are you showing Steve Bannon? Because if you listen to his whole story, he's the mastermind behind why Trump is in office right now. Now, Trump did his, he had his own thoughts and ideas about, government and all that. But he's the strategist that got him where he was at. And he's still using his strategy today. Now, Trump right now is using that same strategy for, as far as the executive orders and making sure that the media is flooded with so many different stories that they can only focus on one. Remember, when he got in office on his first day, I believe he signed almost 330 executive orders, something close to that. He signed so many executive orders. We still don't know all of the ones that he signed, but there are certain ones that have been highlighted, like the DEI. Firing. He released the January 6 people, the inspector generals. So there was a few things that they did cover, but again, it wasn't nowhere near 330 different executive orders that got covered in the news. So again, he's using this man's strategy, and it's causing a lot of people a lot of panic, and it's causing a lot of people a lot of confusion and concern. People are scared, and they don't understand what's happening. What's happening is they're trying to do everything all at one time so that you don't really understand what's going on, and you are paralyzed with fear. But that's the purpose from their perspective. But from our perspective, we're just to look at it and then just to see group it and to see why are all of these things happening at one time, and what is it that they're really trying to accomplish. So he said their whole party just they want to decentralized. Like yesterday on the live, I told you, if you're in the crypto bro space, the tech bro space, the finance bro space, the one thing that they are obsessed with, if you are on Reddit, if you're in any of those subreddits, the one thing that they're really obsessed about is decentralization. They want everything decentralized. They don't want anybody to tell them what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. Now, most people are like that to a degree, but they want that with the government. But also, they still want the benefits of having a government. It's kind of strange, but they that's what it is. So they want to dismantle the government, the administrative state, in their own definition of it. But that's really what I wanted to show tonight, was the fact that not only is this man a strategist, but he's using the same playbook that he used before. And we now have the playbook. Now, the next step from here would be to not allow yourself to be saturated in their plan to where you can't make any moves, or you are in fear because you feel like you have no plan of action. Now, one thing I will say is that the Democrats, like he said, they're in a state of where they don't actually have a strategy. They have come out and they've done a few of them have come out and done different press conferences, but nothing that really says this is what the real strategy is. We've seen a couple of them on the congressional floor and on the news, and even just on lives, but they're not really responding with any type of intelligence in terms of like a group intelligence as a party. They are coming out as individuals. They're too broken up, and you can tell that something is going on when, I don't know, it's just like they're not in a united front, which is sad. It's sad to see, but hopefully they do kind of get that together, because they really are the only other large party that can actually take them on. Because if you notice, the other parties are the Green Party, the Independent Party. The Independent Party, there isn't really any centralized organizations. I mean, they have specific ones, but I'm talking about like the DNC or the RNC. There isn't anything like that. The Green Party does have something like that, but they've been so silent, so silent. Jill Stein hasn't come out. She ran with she had a running mate. He hasn't said anything. Also, Cornel West ran as an independent. He hasn't come out. None of these people are coming out and saying anything. It's so strange. It's so strange. But I just wanted to kind of bring that point home, that there is a strategy. This is the strategy, is to flood the media, because that's really who they're at war with, the media and the proletariat. Because he said, if you heard what he said, people like Donald Trump, people that he serves, people that funded his PAC, they're only about managing the decline of the proletariat. That's it. That's all they want to do, is manage the decline. They don't want anything to happen that would allow the proletariat to rise or become powerful in any way. They want to make sure that it's rapidly declining. This is why they're dismantling education and aid and all of these things that people may or may not need at some point in their lives, while at the same time taking from the same public that, and putting it in their pockets, redistributing wealth as they see fit. But that is going to be the end of the live tonight. If you guys have any questions, you can definitely put them in there. But that's really the point that I wanted to make. We have to focus on, if you believe in God, like I do, you focus on God, you focus on family. I mean, you kind of have to do it in like a 4-quadrant, organization. That's really got to be your strategy. In one quadrant, you focus on God, focus on your family, and then you can focus on having, with the fact that there's these tariffs that are going to be coming out against Canada and against many other countries. I don't think it's going to just stop at Canada, and I don't think it's going to stop at Mexico or and China either. But there's going to be a blowback to the proletariat, where we're the ones that's going to have to actually pay some of those fees for these tariffs. And so I would focus on God and focus on your family in one quadrant, and the other quadrant, focus on multiple streams of income that can't be disrupted so easily. So maybe not selling so many goods and services outside of the states, but inside of the states. Focus on what these legitimate distractions that are before you, these flooded legitimate distractions, but also focus on the main thing, which is the seizure of power that means to minimize or to manage your, downfall, to manage the reduction of all of your rights. So there's a few things that we have to stay focused on, but I would say keep it organized so that you don't get overwhelmed and you can stay in the fight so that the fight can be sustainable. I think that would be a good way for just an individual and families to respond to what's happening right now. All right. Well, thank you guys for joining me. I do thank you, and I will be back tomorrow around the same time. Good night.